Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the press, I'm pleased and honored to welcome you to the conference room of the Honorable Chief Swakoko Siane, Dr. Joel Howard Taylor, Vice President of the Republic of Liberia, for a special book launch. We have with us Mr. Drew Edwards. He will explain a little about the book, to be followed by remarks from the Vice President. Then later on, the final presentation will be done. You are welcome. Honorable Drew.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for having us. We're really excited to launch this book together. The Unwelcome Stranger is a story that has been inspired by Jules's leadership, but also her own experience with COVID and the important moment that we're in. The book was written to try to capture our imaginations with the things that we're all grappling with. You know, we're all grappling with how do we continue to move through life while still being safe and taking care of ourselves and taking care of others. And so this book carries that message, we hope, into schools across Liberia, into the minds of children and into their families' homes. And we're just honored to be a part of this process.
Good morning. I want to welcome Drew to Monrovia. This is his first visit to Liberia, and we're actually excited to have him. There's a little story behind all of this, and he has a very magnificent team made of 3 members: himself, Nawatani, and Nandi. They thought about the fact that COVID had become a topic of discussion around the world at every table, whether it was parents talking about it or young children whispering about what the whole process was. And they did the first book called The Unwelcome Stranger that spoke to the issues of COVID, broke it down in very simple terms, and published. We have a friend in common, and I hadn't spoken to her for a while. When I reached out, she said, "Have you seen the book on COVID?" And I said, "No, I haven't." She says, "My friends are doing it, I'll send you a copy." And so last year, in the midst of dealing with COVID, this book came out. He was gracious enough to send us some soft copies, and I read it on TV. The book reading was sent through Liberia, Ghana, and in parts of Nigeria on a few TV and radio stations. What it did was to really break down the issue of COVID so that the young people would get to understand it. But you know, this is a strange disease, and even the adults didn't have an idea of what it was. But the book, The Unwelcome Stranger, actually broke down what was happening, the conversations around the table, and how people could keep themselves safe from getting this disease. What's unfortunate is that it's actually an unwelcome stranger, and you don't have to be sick. You just have to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you can actually get sick. So I want to thank them so much for such an excellent book, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, good. This is something that breaks down the story for our own audience. Afterwards, unfortunately, I got sick with COVID, but then, you know, we came up with the idea of how we could now transition from talking about COVID to actually looking at the story where actually someone gets ill and they're in the hospital, and the stress and the strain that is put on the family, the children, the community, because everyone is afraid. So he and his team came up with the second book on COVID called The Unwelcome Stranger Actually Visits the Home. And so I'm privileged this morning to have him meet. We've talked a lot, but this is my first time actually meeting him in person. And I'm privileged to be able to talk a little bit about this book so that we can actually launch it. What we hope is that by this launching, the Ministry of Education will approve it as one of the books on their listing. We're already in conversations with some members there. We have a few agencies who are interested in printing it, because we want copies of it sent throughout the 15 regions of our country. And we want to thank the Chinese ambassador is considering it. The International Rescue Committee is considering it. There are some companies we've sent copies of the books to, so everyone is considering how we can print more. We hope in the end we can get about 10,000 copies done, so that each county can get 200 or 300 to send throughout the local schools. Because again, this is something we're dealing with for, I believe, it may be a long time before we're able to grasp the whole issue. There's now an issue of vaccines. If you get sick, if you don't want to get sick and you don't want to maybe wear your mask or be afraid every time you get out of your house, are we going to have the vaccines taken for Liberia? People are concerned about that. So I think this COVID story goes a long way. Maybe the next one will talk about the fact of the vaccine. Everyone's afraid for all of the negative propaganda. No one knows whether the vaccines are safe. No one knows whether it's the best thing to take it or not to take it. So I mean, that's a sequel for another book. But for today, we want to deal with these two very brilliantly written children's books, The Unwelcome Stranger and The Unwelcome Stranger's Visit. And we hope in the next few months we'll have time to have them printed and sent throughout our country so that our children will also get a little bit in terms of information, and the adults will get a chance to find out what is actually behind all of the noise around the world and be able to put themselves in the proper perspective. So I'm happy to meet with Drew this morning so we can begin this very, very, very important work.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Thank you, Brother Drew. We will now move.
Any questions?
Press, do we have a question?
You guys sure?
No question?
You got questions?
Yeah.
Yes, if you guys do, let's do it. Then we'll do the picture. And then we can
Yeah, about my name is James Goodday Flomo. I report for Spoon FM and TV. About the book, though you said it was written by Brother Jew, but Liberians will want to know how can they get a copy of this book that you are launching today, and why you really took interest as a Vice President of Liberia in launching a foreign national book in Liberia.
Well, the point is, this is no longer about a foreign country against Liberia. This is information that settles the issues around COVID, explains how it impacts the lives of families and communities, and the second book talks about someone actually getting ill. And so we have books across our country that are printed and written by many, many, many authors. When you write, just as when you sing, the issue is no longer the person behind the story or behind the song. The issue is, what is that song saying? What is the message behind the song? So instead of looking at it as if it were a foreign element, it is not. It is just a simple story which we need as Liberians. I know when I read the first book, and my children and grandchildren were able to read it, they got a better understanding of what COVID was. And what we want to encourage is Liberians picking up some of the stories of the things we have around and writing their own stories. Nothing stops a Liberian, but this is an idea from some friends of mine, and two of them are Africans. He's working in Uganda and doing what he has to do. And so it's about the world. How can all of us speak to the issues? How can each of us find a way to make it personal so that our lives are shifted in the right direction? And how can we send the important message of safety that comes around COVID? You know, if you travel around Monrovia, you will find that many people aren't even wearing their masks. So though we're saying African countries, because of the sunlight, we are not having as many numbers as they have in Europe and in America, the fact is, if we continue to be, my mother used to say lackadaisical, if we continue to hold the lackadaisical attitude, this is not going to catch me, it's going to catch you. Look at me. You know, how did I get COVID? Some of my friends abroad would ask, how do you guys manage? How did she get COVID? But I was involved in providing some support to communities and young children. I went out to give out rice and other items, because even though we have a pandemic, leaders must show in good times and in bad times that they are there for their people. And so it was important for me to go out and let the children know, no, this is real. Did I think I was going to attract COVID? No, I did not. But maybe perhaps in my engagement, I may have taken off my mask for a moment, maybe to drink or to do something. And unfortunately, I caught this disease, but I was ill for 43 days in ICU. And so I know this is a serious thing and it can affect anyone. So instead of being afraid of a disease that's a pandemic, if you have the proper information, you can now protect yourself. Because no one has to tell me about wearing a mask. I mean, everybody around me laugh. By the time I get out of my bedroom, my mask is already on my face. So I've learned the hard way. But the fact is that everyone doesn't have to have COVID to know that this is a very serious disease. How can people get it? We're trying to get embassies, we're trying to get companies to print copies so that the children will get these books for free. We're not gonna pay for them. Drew didn't make me pay a cent to have the books sent here. What his intent is that the story gets out and that it helps all of us change our attitude. This book is not only here in Liberia. I believe we'll also send copies of it so they can be printed in Ghana, printed in Nigeria, printed in the West African region, and across Africa. South Africa is dealing with a very high rate of COVID as opposed to the other African countries. Maybe they can learn a thing or two from what needs to be done. So I think it's not about a foreigner, it's about a story that has now become the story of the world. The entire world is dealing with COVID. And so I think it behooves those of us who are national leaders to pick up the flavor, do what you can in your own little way to make this message strong, to make people believe that it is real, because I'm an example that it is real because I was ill for such a long time, but everyone else doesn't have to get ill. So we're gonna make these books free. We're sending it over to the people who are having the reading clubs, and I'm hoping we can print about 10,000 copies in the least. So I'll be going out and sending copies to some of the people who want to be interested in helping us to print these books, so it will not be sold. It is a gift from some of our best minds across the world. Another question?
Vice President?
Yeah, I would add to that too, if it's okay. I mean, I think what's been great about it is, like Jewel said, we haven't been charging any of their time, and she hasn't charged us for any of her time. Jewel's been on with us almost every week in the development of this book to make sure it's culturally and contextually relevant. And you'll even see Nandi Fernandez is a Liberian national herself, and so we've tried to go to great lengths to make sure that it's representative of the reality of folks here, while it's still a really big global issue.
Thank you. Anybody else?
One more question.
Yeah. How do you intend to distribute this book to the kids in Samuel, Maryland, and in the books?
Well, what I hope to do once they're printed, we'll actually send them to the Ministry of Education, because they have access to the county educational officers who will now take it to the counties and have it put into their system. We're hoping they can make the list of readers, because there are certain books that has been approved by the Ministry of Education, and all of the kids must read it as a part of the curriculum, whether you're in a public school or a private school. So we're hoping once it gets on that list, that it can now become a book that, pretty soon we'll run out of copies. We'll have to probably find a way to get the Ministry of Education to print much more, because it is important because of where we are as a nation and dealing with the issues of COVID. So we'll try to do as many as we can. I'm hoping that when my letters go out to the different companies and the different agencies, that people will agree to print it, because it's actually free, but it's helping us deal with COVID. And I think this is a social responsibility of any reputable organization that's working in Liberia, so that their people don't get sick, so that the kids who are family members of those who work for them don't get sick. In the long run, everyone keeps healthy and they make profit. People are able to keep their jobs. So this is going to help across the board in many sectors. So we'll be calling on as many companies and as many people as we can to help us print as many of these books as is humanly possible.
Thank you very much. We'll now move up front for the book presentation and launch.
I think this is a bigger copy.
It's a bigger one, yeah. Should we put these down? Yeah.
I think this is better. Are we good?
Yeah.
We just wait a while. Just so that we see the second play.
Okay. That's good. You know you're not doing that with me. Yeah, okay. He has the best camera. So it is my distinguished honor this time when he has to, you missed my whole thing.
Sorry.
Because it's hard to repeat what you said.
Yeah.
You don't write it down. It is therefore my distinguished honor, on behalf of Pangea Publishing and on behalf of the people of Liberia, to launch these two books. One is called The Unwelcome Stranger. The second is called The Unwelcome Stranger Visit. They are books about COVID, how it can affect the lives of many people. And we look forward to having our friends and our partners and the companies across Liberia actually get involved in this process to print as many of these books as is humanly possible, so the story gets out to all of our people in order to save lives and reduce the effect of COVID in our country. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you so much.
Huh?